Hi, this is Wriggles Bottom Primary. Break time bunnies. Shall we see what's inside? On Monday, as soon as we got to our classroom, Susan Keyes pointed out of the window and gasped. So we all ran over to see what the gasping was about. And that's when we saw there were 4 bunnies sitting on the grassy bit in the playground. And they were so cute. Oh, they do look cute, don't they? Gavin Ross pointed to one of the bunnies and said it was the coolest bunny he had ever seen because it had a little black patch on one eye and it looked a bit like a pirate. But then Susie Keyes said that the pure white one was obviously the best because it was making a nest. So that's when Ros Morgan said that she didn't think bunnies made nests, and Susie crossed her arms and said that they definitely did. And then Sunita Ram got involved because she always gets involved when there's an argument. But then all of a sudden everybody stopped arguing about the nest because Jaden King squealed a bit and shouted, "Look!" So we all followed his finger to where he was pointing, and that's when we saw there weren't just 4 bunnies on the grassy bit anymore because now there were 10. And that's when everybody started to panic because we had no idea where all the bunnies were coming from. And it definitely was not normal. Sunita Ram ran to get Miss Riley, and when she'd managed to pull her over to the window, there were 15 bunnies on the grassy bit. Wow, that's a lot of bunnies. Miss Riley got a really weird look on her face when she saw the bunnies, and she said she was going to get Mr. Harris, the head teacher, so we knew that this was going to be serious. By the time Mr. Harris got there, there were 20 bunnies. Oh, what a lot. That's when Mr. Harris said that we had to go to an assembly, and that wasn't normal because usually assemblies are on Friday and normally we get to take our coats and bags off first and hang them on our pegs, but Mr. Harris says that there wasn't time and it was an emergency assembly. So we all went into the emergency assembly with our coats and bags still on, and Mr. Harris got up on stage and he looked panicked. We had no idea what was going on or what Mr. Harris was going to say or where all the bunnies had come from. And then Mr. Harris said, "Break time is officially cancelled because of the bunnies." And everybody gasped. Then loads of people started putting their hands up and asking about the bunnies. But Mr. Harris said there wasn't time for questions, and then he rushed off stage. Then, when we were on our way back to class, we overheard one of the Year 4s say that the bunnies were obviously attack bunnies and that they had been sent here by another school to take us over. None of us had any idea what attack bunnies were, but we knew that they obviously weren't good and that we were probably all in serious danger. When we got back to class, Miss Riley tried to take our minds off the break time bunnies by closing the blinds so we couldn't see them. But none of us could concentrate because every 2 minutes Miss Riley would lean over her desk and peek through the blinds to check how many bunnies there were now. Jaden King said there were probably hundreds of bunnies out there, but Ifran Baxter shook his head and said that there were probably thousands and maybe even millions, and that they were getting ready to attack. And that's when Susie Keys got up and started putting on her coat and said that she was going home, because that's what she always does when she gets scared. And then she ran out of the classroom before anybody could stop her. So Miss Riley ran after her, and so did we, because we didn't want the attack bunnies to get her. But then, when we were all running along the corridor, Susie started running back towards us, and she looked like she'd seen a ghost. That's because we looked out of the corridor window and saw Mr. Harris was standing in the middle of the grassy bit, and he was completely surrounded by bunnies. And he had a really weird smile on his face. There he is, with all the bunnies. We all got such a fright that we ran screaming back to the classroom. Then Sunita Ram said that we needed to get up on top of our desks so that if the attack bunnies made their way into school and along the corridor, they wouldn't be able to get us because bunnies can't jump. Don't think that's right, is it? So we all stood on top of our desks, even though Miss Riley was telling us not to. And then 1 second later, Mr. Harris walked into our classroom, and we all gasped because we had no idea how we'd got all the way up here so fast, because we'd just seen him standing on the grassy bit outside with the bunnies. And that's when Ifran cried, "Oh no!" And he jumped down from his desk and ran over to the story time carpet. Here he is, look, on the story time carpet. And gave us a signal that we should all follow him. So we did. And Miss Riley didn't even say a word to us because she was too busy listening to what Mr. Harris was saying. So we all sat down, and Sunita asked Ifran if we needed to take a deep breath before he said whatever he was going to say. And he nodded loads, so we did. And that's when Ifran said that he knew exactly what was going on with the bunnies and that they were cloning themselves, which meant that they were making loads and loads of copies of themselves, and that probably weren't going to stop until they had a full bunny army. And then Megan McNally gasped and said, "Mr. Harris, that's how he got up here so quickly." And Ifran nodded and said yes. And then he pointed over to Mr. Harris and said, "That's not the real Mr. Harris, that's a clone. I think they must have needed a human, so they chose him and made him their leader." There. And we all nodded because Mr. Harris is the head teacher, so that made sense. Then Ifran said that there were probably loads of Mr. Harrises by now, and we all started screaming because it was horrible to imagine loads of Mr. Harrises running around school telling everyone off, because no one wants hundreds of head teachers in their school. And that's when Mr. Harris came over and asked us what we were all screaming about. Susie Keys shouted, "Stay away, break time bunny leader." There, look. Mr. Harris looked really confused, and so we told him we knew about the cloning. And that's when Mr. Harris said he wasn't a clone, and he'd cancelled break time because he was worried we'd get obsessed with all the bunnies if we were allowed outside to see them, because they were absolutely super cute. And then he said that someone was on the way to collect all the bunnies because they'd escaped from a local breeding centre, and that they were loving the long green grass in the grassy bit. And then he looked a bit sad, and we knew it was because he thought the bunnies were really cute and missed them. But then, at the end of the day, we saw Mr. Harry's getting into his car, which was parked in the car park, and that's when Susie Keys gasped and said, "Look at his bag." What can you see? And we saw that there was a bunny's head poking out of the bag, and we heard Mr. Harry say, There, Flopsy, you're going to love your new home. I've got loads of carrots for you." Oh. Sunita Ram gasped and said that Mr. Harris must still be the leader of the attack bunnies, and that he was going to start a new bunny army. And we all ran. Yeah. It's not really like going to be a bunny army, is it? It's just all the bunnies escaped from the zoo.